Good evening. I don't know what happened with the false start there. I changed tabs and it kicked over.
Yeah,
Technology beating the
yeah.
shit out of me already, I guess. How
Like
you
we said
doing,
earlier,
Paul?
like we said earlier, it's one of those weeks, dude. We're just trying to make it to the end of it, and it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep, we are barely halfway through.
no,
All
we're
right,
over
let's
halfway
jump right
through.
into it. We've got a bit of an abbreviated week this week, so we apologize to anybody who enjoys the 90 minutes we typically put in. We're looking at about 45 to 60. We've got a draft tonight. It's fantasy football season, and everybody crams their drafts into the final week. I was the smart guy that decided to start a league late in the process, and I kind of got saddled with we ended up with Wednesday where we could draft. So we'll start right out with our record was not great. So we're just gonna we're taking a do-over, right? We have preseason for everybody. But 11, 10, and 1 out the gate. We didn't lose money, right? We didn't lose money. We pretty much washed. Vegas took the vig, and we're right about 500. So just want to hit some key matchups though. We had Clemson, Georgia. Clemson. I guess I was fucking. This is my Penn State this year. I guess I had faith in a team that clearly wasn't ready. Georgia beat the brakes off of them. I'm going to give you a moment here to gloat a little bit because as our resident SC fan, the real SC, I know you love to see Clemson lose and lose big.
I do. There are few schools in the country that I hate more than University of Georgia, but Clemson is on that list. I find it to be, for all of the shenanigans that Shane Beamer pulls at South Carolina, they're all. I don't hear negative things about him, right? Nobody ever calls him a clown, which I appreciate. Because if you were to call my coach a clown, I would have to point you to the other school within the state and say, look, they have an actual clown who is masquerading as a football coach coaching their team. I say that with the caveat of I appreciate the things that Dabo Swinney stands for as an old school football coach, because that's an era of college football that I kind of miss. Is you recruit guys, you develop them, and then you win with those guys. I do miss that. I respect that he's stuck his flag in the ground. However, unlike the rest of us, we have all moved into this new era of college football where we understand that you pay players and you bring in
You may
transfers.
not like it, but you better embrace it if you want to be successful.
100%. He's not doing that, and he's a fucking clown show for that. And boys, it's showing on the field. They have no explosiveness to their offense whatsoever. And like Garrett Riley's, he's not his brother apparently, because he doesn't know how to call an explosive offense. He doesn't know how to scheme things up for a quarterback who, in Cade Klubnik, that was extremely highly touted coming out of high school and clearly has a lot of raw, physical gifts. It just is not manifesting on the field. And you look no further than the head coach refusing to bring guys in and trying to cultivate this culture of you come in as a high school, you learn, you grow. And it's like, yeah, but they're down 12 players in the transfer portal this year. They didn't bring in a single guy. We've talked about that. Not to mention all the guys that have left to the NFL. And whenever these players see that you're not paying out the same NIL money as these big time programs, and you're not bringing in win now kind of transfers to win at the exact moment, they're not going to go to Clemson anymore. And that's exactly what has happened on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense is still very good. I'll give them credit for that.
But yeah, that's the thing. They hung in for a long time against the Georgia team. That Carson Beck is a Heisman hopeful in a lot of people's eyes. He's the Heisman favorite. Mm-hmm. You and I both don't agree on that, right? We've made our thoughts about Carson Beck clear on the show that we don't necessarily buy into the same hype. But that's a team that's got a Heisman hopeful at quarterback. It's got a lot of talent on offense, and the defense kept them in this game for a long time. Clemson had so many opportunities to seize this thing, and they just fucking choked it away for sure. They are so vanilla, so predictable on offense. You can't do that when you don't have superior talent, right? You have to scheme it up. So you're absolutely you nailed it. Garrett Riley is not Lincoln Riley, and Dabo Swinney isn't Lincoln Riley in terms of being able to recruit offensive talent. So maybe Garrett should write Lincoln a pen pal letter and try to get some tips or something. I don't know. Mojo, thanks for joining. Dave's actually in our draft later with us. He's one of the guys.
Nice.
Calling his shot.
Good luck, buddy. This will be my 6th draft on the season. I'm well versed in how to draft.
Yeah, I'm up to 9, I think.
Oh my god.
Too many. Oh, moving down the list a little bit, Iowa found some offense late in that game. They really looked like Iowa for a long time in this game, and it looked like they might not cover 22.5. They certainly did. Tennessee, Nico looks the part. He looked really good and comfortable in that offense. I think we're starting to see kind of the reason why he signed such a big NIL deal and why he was such a big time recruit. Okie State, they covered. The 9.5 was a weird number. They didn't blow them away. Ollie looks fine. Ohio State ran away from Akron. Texas looks great out the gate. They've got a big matchup this week we're going to talk about here in a moment. Miami and Florida. I don't know if anybody saw the video of the guy that was talking about Florida and how it makes him feel, but I feel for you, bro. That was a bad game. I had faith in Florida. I thought it was going to be tight. Nope. I'm back on the Miami train. I know you and I talked a little bit about it in the offseason. I kind of balked a little in our season preview, but Miami looks really good. Cam Ward looks comfortable in offense. Restrepo is
so comfortable.
The truth. So that I think that's a big difference maker for Miami is the fact that they've got a guy under center that they can just say, hey, go win us the fucking game, bro.
How many times in that game? Because I watched the whole thing. How many times in that game?
You got it figured out on YouTube.
Hey, welcome back for another season. But how many times in that game did Cam Ward take a snap and just kind of like hang out?
Yep.
And like just kind of whatever, like 15 yards. And then it's like, oh, I'm hanging out. Okay, I'm going to run.
Yep.
And he pulls up and is like jogging 4 yards from the sideline because there's nobody around him. Like obviously the angle's cut off, but like he's just kind of sauntering off he looked so comfortable in that offense.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Miami might be back this year. As long as we don't get fucking handoffs when you're supposed to be kneeling. Remember the victory formation. Bama hot out the gate, like 105-0 over Western Kentucky. Ole Miss, same thing. Kansas State looked pretty comfortable over UT Martin, but they did not cover the spread. They won by, I think it was like 26 or something. Oregon, I do want to talk about this for a moment because the number was big enough. I think you had this one correct with the number, I believe. Yeah, you had Idaho 43.5. What happened, man? Is this just Dylan Gabriel not being comfortable yet?
I don't think so because Dylan Gabriel completed 41 of 49 pass attempts. I've heard this tossed around. Excuse me, as I choke a little bit. I've heard this tossed around in a couple of circles, talking a little bit about the Georgia offense. Mainly just the Georgia offense, really, and the Oregon offense is like, they didn't want to open up the playbook too much in week 1, right? It makes a little more sense with Oregon.
Oregon almost stubbed their fucking toe hiding the offense.
Yeah, right. We know what Dan Lanning can do. We've seen what he did with Bo Nix. Dylan Gabriel is objectively a better quarterback than is Bo Nix. Still, it is a little concerning. Also, I will say, if that is the case and they did like keep their playbook shut for the big matchups going forward, how fucking disrespectful is that of Kirby Smart? Dabo Sweeney saying, we'll just kind of run
We're not worried about the number 13 team in the country.
Yeah, like, I don't know that to be the case, but I'm going to choose to believe that in Georgia's case because I know we're talking about Oregon. Georgia's offense did worry me a little bit. I think they lack explosive playmakers, unlike other teams in the SEC, specifically like Ole Miss, Mizzou, Texas.
That's what it looked like to me, man. I don't think they can get vertical the way they have in the past, and I don't think they can get vertical out of the backfield the way they have in the past.
Yeah, Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers been gone.
They were missing ETN, right? I understand that. Maybe he'll make a difference, but I didn't see that. And from what I saw with Oregon, it seemed the same. But if they really were kind of making the vanilla playbook, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Definitely some concern, though. 24-14 against Idaho.
Yeah, five-star true freshman Nate Frazier just isn't cutting it there for Georgia in the backfield.
Yeah.
But so Oregon, to answer your question, I'm not worried about Oregon. They have the playmakers. Ted Johnson's still there. Dylan Gabriel's still there. They have big boys up front of the offensive line. It is a little concerning the play calling. I'm not worried about the talent, the play calling. And again, I know I just talked about how good Dan Lanning is. It was week 1. Like, it takes some time to get used to actual game speed with these players, right? I do think that going forward, the playbook will be opened up a little bit more. But anytime you complete 41 passes and you only have 380 passing yards, like that, it scored 24 points. Like, that shows me that you're like, can you run the ball a little bit? I mean, they averaged 2.9 carries a yard as a team against Idaho. Like, that worries me a very little bit. But I'm not freaking out about Oregon, right? I think they will be fine. They're going to lose Ohio State, but they will probably not lose again the rest of their schedule. They're going to be better than the teams going forward. Also, Idaho came in and put out all the stops, trick plays, double passes. They have their head coach has a binder that has like 3,000 plays in it. Like, he doesn't have a play sheet; he has a play binder, and they called all of them. So like, I get it. Oregon will be fine.
Yeah, Coach Klein from the Water Boy put together.
Yeah, right.
All right, moving on down the list, we had the College Game Day where they were in College Station. You and I were on opposite sides of this. I want to really get your thoughts here because this looked like two teams that are going to have a say in the 12-team playoff this year. I was very impressed with both Notre Dame's ability to remain calm in a tight game on the road in a very hostile environment, because you have said it several times. College Station is like, if you want to talk about college atmospheres, there's a handful of them, and College Station is one of them, right? On the road in a very hostile environment, yes, they've got a veteran, savvy quarterback in Riley Leonard playing against his old coach, but they didn't panic. They kept to their script, kept to their game plan, played tough. That defense is the real deal. I also think that Connor Wegman is the real deal for Texas A&M. I think that offense is going to be just fine when they don't play defenses like Notre Dame's. This felt like two teams, though, that I do think that as we get closer to December and January, I expect both these teams to be in the running late in the season. One, Notre Dame's schedule from this point forward, if they don't win out, they stumbled, right? That's kind of what it looks like in terms of who they've got left on their schedule. For A&M, obviously you've got that SEC schedule that's very tough as well, but man, they looked, I was impressed. I was impressed with Texas A&M. I wasn't sure what to expect. I honestly was a little bit surprised that Notre Dame was a 3-point dog. I know it's like the 3-point home, yada, yada, but I just was surprised that it wasn't less than a field goal, because I thought Notre Dame was the better team, and I thought it was a decent margin. I know A&M's got back-to-back really good recruiting classes, but I was impressed with A&M. I was impressed with both teams. Notre Dame usually loses those kinds of games when it's tight, late, in a tough environment. They didn't. Marcus Freeman's got them boys playing tough football. Want to get your thoughts on this game, though.
Sure. It was your classic rock fight. You know, I mean, this was a battle in the trenches. And I understand there was a 10-point margin at the end of the game, but I felt like both teams won. Yeah. You know, if the battle of the trenches, like, it was almost a stalemate. You know, the difference was Notre Dame averaging 2 more yards a carry than Texas A&M. And like, that's, if you get mediocre quarterback play, or if you get average quarterback play from Connor Wegman going forward, you're going to win most of your games just based off of the way that defense played. They didn't generate a whole lot of pass rush, but we also understand how good Notre Dame's offensive line typically is year to year, right? So against other teams, maybe some lesser offensive line talent, offensive linely talented teams, something like that. Teams with lesser offensive line talent than Notre Dame, Texas A&M will be able to generate that pass rush because we understand how good their recruiting is up front. The biggest takeaway for me was how poor both quarterbacks played. Riley Leonard was not like super bad. He was kind of what we expect from Riley Leonard, 18 of 30. Very interesting to me was his average completion was 5.3 yards. His average rush was also 5.3 yards. So he was just like, he was 5 yards in a cloud of dust no matter what happened, right? There was no like explosive offense from either of these teams. And then Connor Wegman threw the 2 picks, and it's like one of them, one of them was really egregious. I think the one to the linebacker, and then one of them was not as awful. But like, you can't get, no touchdowns and 2 interceptions from the quarterback and expect to win games. You just can't do that. Like, when you lose a turnover battle, you're going to lose almost every time, right? But I I kind of, like you, was a little more impressed with these two teams coming out of the game than I was like hopeful going in. You know that I'm not a Notre Dame guy. I'm not a Texas A&M guy, but I thought both of the teams acquitted themselves pretty well given the hostile situation, especially for Notre Dame. And then for Notre Dame or for Texas A&M to be able to keep it within a 2-score margin after throwing those 2 picks and not being able to establish a line of offense really all that dominantly on off or like running the ball. I thought that they played very well. Their defense definitely kept them in this game, and I think that'll help them win a lot of games going forward.
Yeah, I thought the biggest thing with Wegman and really the reason that I say he looks the part. He wasn't stellar in this game, right? You're absolutely right. He felt like he didn't get out of the game, right? And he looked like he still had command of the huddle, and he's got athleticism. He can make the throws, a little better decision making. That Notre Dame defense is going to make a lot of quarterbacks look very pedestrian this year. So we'll see Connor Wegman going forward. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that they've got something there with him and just the way he was still able. He shook the picks off and just stayed engaged in the game. You can't have those picks, that's for sure. You can't have the turnovers. The turnover battle is always a big thing, but I liked his demeanor right throughout the game in a tough game. Notre Dame, again, that defense is going to make a lot of quarterbacks look very, very pedestrian this year. Yeah. It's the college game is kind of invading the pro game, and I think the changes in the clock too are going to change the way the college game treats the run game. But even in the NFL, you still feel like you want to establish some of that run. But we're in an era when the NFL game is evolving more toward the pass, and we're starting to see the run game go away versus college football that's always kind of been this way, right? So you can establish the run, but still be a high flying offense for sure. On down the line, Fresno covered by the hook, baby, by the hook.
Yep.
And I got that one mixed up. So actually, I need to change our records, but
either way, it would have been more if Michigan didn't have that pick 6.
I know, but yeah, covered by the hook there. Arizona slow start, but they kind of looked the part in the second half. I'm worried about them going forward though. That offense, I'm not sure what was going on with them against the Lobos, but SC upsets LSU. You and I talked about it last week. Not a home game, right? We talked about it while we were watching the game that, this is different if it's in Baton Rouge. But did you learn anything about LSU or USC?
Their defenses are more improved over last year.
Or their offenses are way worse?
I was going to say parroted by the fact that their offenses are not as good. I do think that the SC offense it looked a little more polished than did LSU.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the case going forward because LSU just lost their starting running back for the rest of the season, blew an ACL. So take that into consideration when gambling on LSU coming to Columbia in 2 weeks. It was a Riley Leonard offense. The quarterback looked good. He looked competent. He made the right reads. He didn't do, and it might just be first week of the season type deal, but he didn't do anything exuberant. He wasn't throwing the ball super far down the field. He did. No, I guess it was an interception, right? That incredible one-handed grab. Regardless, I was pleasantly surprised by the level of defense that was shown within this game. I got the pick wrong. I was betting on an LSU home game, and my brain was mush, I guess, at that point in time. For some reason, I had thought that was in Baton Rouge, not thinking it was in Vegas. Like you said, that's a different ball game if it's in Baton Rouge after a long weekend of those Bayou Bengals hanging out in town.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one thing from this, I don't know that Lincoln Riley's going to be able to call an offense that we typically see from him either. Miller Moss feels very limited in terms of what he can do at the quarterback position. It's a great story, though, right? Like, He's a guy that was there when,
Caleb was there.
Caleb.
Then he beat up Malachi Nelson last year.
Yeah, he was there when Drake London was there. Drake London's in his 3rd year in the NFL. And he's a guy that, literally just said, I want to be the starting quarterback at USC. Went to USC, didn't care about sitting the bench, didn't care about, who he was behind, et cetera, et cetera. And he's got his chance now to start. Very, very cool story. it just feels like, one, going from Caleb Williams to Miller Moss, going from Caleb Williams to most any normal human being is going to be a shock to the system. But it does feel like Miller Moss is pretty limited in terms of what he can do as a quarterback. So I'm curious to see how that offense is going to be going forward. They don't have the playmakers that we are used to seeing at Southern Cal and in a Lincoln Riley offense. So I think they may struggle offensively, and it's going to be a big deal for them to be able to make plays on defense, which they seem to be able to this weekend against an LSU team that – how does Brian Kelly continue to just be the most unprepared coach in football and keep getting jobs at these big-time fucking programs?
Well, here's the thing about it, right, is that every time that I go to a prep meeting with my team, I tell them, whatever you do not pretend to pull out a shotgun and shoot the other team. That will be a personal foul every single time, and we will lose the game because of that. So that's number one on my priority list, and then we get into the X's and O's of it. That's definitely on the coach. He couldn't have been prepared for that, unlike me, who would be prepared for it every single week. But I guess it's just different when you got family around you, and he just doesn't.
That is such a bonehead play, though. Like,
that was crazy.
What are you doing? Anyway, it looks like that LSU offense is going to struggle, especially now that they've lost their starting running back. Nussmeier is fine, but going from what Jaden Daniels was last year for that offense to anything.
I had a Giants fan text me during that game and said we should reconnect Malik Neighbors and Garrett Nussmeier, and I was like,
"Okay, bro.
Okay.
You want to go from Daniel Jones to Garrett Nussmeier, huh?"
Yeah. There's a couple other guys you may want to look at.
Yeah. And then the week finishes up with yet another disappointing performance by Florida State, and I want to ask you. Over under 1.5, okay? And that's weeks from now that we see DJU get benched by Florida State.
1.5 weeks?
From now. So we're going into week 2.
Yeah.
Will he be the starting quarterback in week 3?
I'm looking at their roster. No, I think he plays out the year.
You think so?
Yeah, I think he plays out the year.
Yeah.
It's either that or a sophomore, and then everybody else is a freshman on that team. Brock Glenn, he was a highly recruited freshman. Maybe we see him, but I think Mike Norvell is a very he's a very loyal kind of guy. Obviously he does incredible things in the transfer portal, but the guys that he has on his roster for given years, he's very loyal to. I would assume that DJU plays out the rest of the year. He simply cannot be worse, right? Like he can only get better. That's
fair,
right?
That's fair.
This is rock bottom for Florida State. They cannot get worse than this. I have to imagine.
They're 0-2 in the ACC to start the season.
Yeah.
After campaigning all off season that they got robbed of a chance at a national championship last year.
Yeah. I did see a funny tweet. It was like, "Oh man, you're going to leave out a 14-0 Florida State team. We'll show you. Try leaving out 0-14 Florida State team." I was like, "That's a good one. I like that."
Nice. That is
funny.
All right. Well, let's shift gears. Let's get into week 2 here. We've got a big matchup right out the gate. Texas taking on Michigan. This line has shifted. So early in the week, I think I looked at it on Monday. So since Monday, or maybe since yesterday, it's shifted from 5.5 to 7.5. Do you think that the money, which has shifted this line 2 points, is the money on the right side of this, or is Michigan stand a chance here against Texas? Both of us are on Texas, but do you think Texas is going to run away in this one?
So it's moved 4 points. The line is moved.
Was it 3.5? I knew it was a big shift.
It opened at 3.5. It's up to 7.5.
Yeah, I knew it was a big shift.
I wish I could have gotten it at 3.5.
Right.
I would imagine Texas wins by 2 scores.
Okay.
I don't, but it's going to be like a low scoring 2-score game. You know what I mean? It'd be like a 24-10.
Yeah.
If I have to imagine, because
Michigan's going to keep it low. They're going to run the ball. They're going to eat the clock.
Yeah, and we've said it 100 times. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any.
Right.
And we saw 2 quarterbacks play for Michigan last week, and they needed a pick 6 to still not cover the spread against a Fresno State team, which you like. You're high on Fresno State, so like good call by you, but Texas is not Fresno State.
No.
I mean,
no. You play like you did against Fresno State, and you're going to get the brakes beaten off you.
Yeah. Now, similar to like the Georgia and Oregon thing is, did they not open up the playbook as to not give any tape to Texas?
Maybe.
I don't know that they have the Idaho 3000 play, play binder.
Say, what does opening up the offense look like for Michigan this year?
Throwing the ball to the tight end?
More handoffs to Donovan Edwards?
Yeah, I don't. He's going to run it 40 times?
Right.
I worry about that offense. The defense will be fine in Ann Arbor.
Yeah,
I'm not worried about that. I worry about the offense. I really do.
I worry about 3rd and 4+ with that offense.
Yep.
For sure.
I worry about 3rd and 3. Fuck.
You might be right.
That's 4-down territory.
Yeah, that's fair. Penn State, big favorite against Bowling Green. Oklahoma State, we're both on the same side of that. Okie State, again, 7.5 feels small. Arkansas, I know, showed some things in week 1, but I don't know that they can really play with Oklahoma State. What's that?
I said showed some things. They looked fucking incredible.
Yeah. So maybe that's why the line is what it is. I just feel like Oklahoma State's got a better team, but I guess 7.5 is a decent spread, but
yeah.
We're on the opposite side here. K-State, Tulane. I liked Tulane looked pretty good last week, again, against an inferior opponent, but they're at home. So I'm going to take Tulane with 10 points at home against a Kansas State team that I'm still not sure is good. We talked a little bit about that last week.
Did I not put Tulane? I thought I picked Tulane.
Did I mess that? I might have messed that up.
I thought I was taking the points.
I might have messed that up. I can double check. I got it open right here.
If I did not pick Tulane, I meant to pick Tulane.
Because Tulane. I'm an asshole.
Oh, okay.
You picked Tulane. So we're on the same side. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Nothing to see here. Kansas State, you're not sure you're still not sure they're good either, right? We talked about that last week.
Yeah, I think that they're good. I still don't know if Avery Johnson can throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that Tulane is a good team as well. So I think it's a one-score game.
We talked about finding this year's Tulane because Tulane was a darling for covering spreads last year.
Yeah.
Tulane might be this year's Tulane.
It might be this year's Tulane. I had to break out the sweatshirt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, buddy. So we're on the same side of that. I messed up the graphic here. I'll get it fixed before next week.
Okay.
Georgia Tech, Cuse, we are on opposite sides of, though. You're a believer after Georgia Tech upset Florida State, or is this more about Syracuse?
I like Haynes King. I liked Haynes King when he was at Florida or at Texas A&M.
Yep.
I like Haynes King. I like that running offense. It's
Haynes and Haynes.
Yeah, Haynes and Haynes. They can do some exotic things with that run scheme. I think they're fairly talented. I gotta be honest. I didn't get to watch Syracuse in week 1, so I don't know what to expect fully. I know that you've talked about being high on them, and I respect that. I think that Georgia Tech will be good. They're going to be prepared. I can tell you that. They're going to be prepared.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, Syracuse was slow at the gates, but they got it going. And I'm sticking with what I said at the beginning of the season in terms of, like, if Syracuse is ever going to have a season where they're going to threaten to, like, make the playoff, this is it. Other than Miami, the ACC feels really down right now. NC State didn't look good in week 1. Obviously, Clemson didn't. Obviously, Florida State hasn't looked good for 2 fucking weeks. Boston College, maybe they're a contender. They looked like they played a lot of bully ball, and Billy O's a winner, man.
Yep.
But for me, I'm gonna just go gut check with Syracuse here and take the points. I probably will lay a money line bet on it just out of kind of loyalty to Syracuse. Mm-hmm. I think it'll be a real tight game. I think it's going to be a very competitive game. Give me Kyle McCord maybe getting a late score to win this game against Georgia Tech. Georgia with no line against Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, I'll take Georgia.
There shouldn't be a line. It's probably going to be a 63-0 game at half. Notre Dame, big favorite. Utah, big favorite over Baylor. Iowa State, 2-point game in Iowa City. Any chance there's an upset here?
I don't imagine that to be the case.
Nah. We both picked Iowa, but this is probably going to be like a 10-7 game or something, right? Like,
it definitely could be. Iowa's offense did not look awful this week, which is weird.
Once they got it going, they had some momentum for sure.
Yeah, maybe those recruiting tampering violation things or whatever that held out variance in week 1 are paying off. Who knows?
Yeah. If you told me Iowa's going to score 27 points a game, they might win all but
Big Ten
in the Big Ten. They might win the Big Ten for sure. Louisville, big favorite over Jacksonville State. Ole Miss, big favorite over Middle Tennessee State. Miami has no line against South Alabama. Alabama minus 31 there against South Florida. Mizzou against Buffalo. We're on opposite sides. I probably am going to regret this because we both regretted betting against a 49.5 point line for Mizzou, and they covered by 2 points.
Yep.
A 1.5. So I'm going to go Buffalo, though. I think Buffalo, they look like they got a bit of a running offense. I think they're going to be able to keep the game slower paced. If Mizzou gets that offense going again this week, though, man, they might run it up against Buffalo. KU and Illinois. I want to pause on this one real quick and get your thoughts here because I know what Illinois offers in terms of like playing a bigger bruising style. They like to run the ball. They've got a little bit of a passing game to complement. Are they this close with KU? Is this really just because it's in Champaign? Talk to me about why this line is -5.
It's got to be the home game factor, right? The offensive coordinator being gone from Kansas didn't really seem to affect him that much in week 1. If this were later in the season and Jalen Daniels had gotten hurt already once, or maybe was nicked up, I could understand this line being
which is inevitable.
Yes, he hasn't played a full season yet in his college career, and they don't have Jason Bean coming off the bench to back him up. So I can understand some of the hesitancy, and I get that some people were high on Illinois this year. Not a lot, but some people that I saw were high on Illinois as a program. I think KU wins. I love that offense. I said it coming into the year. I think it's the most fun conference, the Big 12, and for classic Big 12 reasons, right? They're going to score 100 points a game. Like that's just kind of how that's going to happen. It is unique.
Conference starts playing conference games.
It is a unique clash of styles. Big 10, Big 12 is the things we used to love about college football. We get to see it again this weekend. But I'm riding with Kansas. Give me Jalen Daniels. So he's electric.
Agreed. Ohio State, big favorite. Tennessee against NC State at the Wolfpack. Tennessee coming off that big offensive game against a vastly inferior opponent. Nico and company -8. You and I both think they're going to take care of business. I worry about Grayson McCall in that NC State offense. He did not look comfortable at all in week 1. I have to assume they're going to start to figure it out as they go, but I don't think you want to see Tennessee the week after looking real bad on offense.
No, not at all. I mean, like Nico appears, given the bowl game we saw him in against Iowa, the week 1 game, he appears to be on pace to live up to the $7 million NIL deal he signed as like a 17-year-old.
Just the baby signing a $7 million contract.
Yeah, like Tennessee, this is a talent bet. They have more talent than North Carolina State. North Carolina State's good. Don't get me wrong. Again, making life-changing decisions after a week 1 performance is an effort in futility because these teams are going to look totally different by the end of the season than they do after like in week 1. So I think that Grayson McCall will be okay. I just have more faith in Tennessee and Josh Heupel and the talent that he's brought in already.
Yeah, if this were week 10 and Grayson McCall was comfortable in the offense, this might be a tougher pick. But yeah, I agree. Tennessee right now looks like they're clicking, and NC State did not look like they were clicking last week. LSU, Nichols, no line there. Clemson, App State, we're both on plus 16.5. I think we've learned our lesson, right? We don't bet Florida State. Now we don't bet Clemson. App State.
Well, Florida State. I don't know if I've learned yet.
Well, we'll see.
Could be my Penn State this year.
Maybe. We'll talk in week 6.
Yeah. Oh, God damn it. I might be broke by then.
Yeah. Thanks, Norvell, you fuck.
Yeah.
App State's always tough, though. You know they're going to be scrappy and play tough. I think that'll be I doubt Clemson loses, but stranger things have happened. Probably a 10-point game, not 16.5. Boise, Oregon. You've got Boise. I've got Oregon. You don't see a bounce back from them this week?
I should have had this pulled up already. I'm going to tell you exactly why. Because Ashton Jeanty ran for 267 yards and 6 touchdowns last week.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So, yeah. All of my hype going into the year was on Ollie Gordon. Maybe it should have been on the guy in Boise.
Yeah.
Boise's good. Also, this game is on Peacock. What are we doing? Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Like,
so many platforms.
You get rid of Pac-12 after dark and then put one of the best matchups for the weekend with the best late night matchup on fucking Peacock. What are we doing, man?
Yeah.
It bothers me.
Fucking TV deals killing
me.
But
I will claim the right to, I'm not going to say change my pick, but if it is true what I said about Oregon possibly not having opened up the playbook in week 1, there is blowout potential for this.
Yeah.
There is certainly blowout potential.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would say a talent gap, but Ashton Jeanty ran for 267 yards.
Yeah. All right. Arizona no line against Northern Arizona. And then Utah State and SoCal finish out the week, 28.5 points. We're both on that side, but
give me 1 second, Gary. Hang on. I know we're short on time. Sorry.
You're good. I'll answer my own question and then I'll ask it to Bentley when he gets back. I'm going to be sweating this pick. I think the USC pick against Utah State. I don't know that, like I said earlier with Miller Moss and that Southern Cal offense, I don't know that they're really going to be able to score the way that they're going to need to win by more than 4 touchdowns. I do think the talent gap is big enough that this line makes sense to me with Utah State, but I just don't know that USC is going to be able to put up the 49 or maybe 56 that it's going to take to cover a 4 touchdown plus line, because they can win by 4 touchdowns and still not cover this line with the 28 in the hook. So I think this pick is probably one of the ones that we'll be sweating by the end of the game. Utah State, oftentimes, they run a little bit of that kind of spread them out, run the option type of offense, and they're going to be able to potentially control the clock, potentially slow this game down. And I don't know that USC is explosive enough on offense that they're really going to be able to just run away from a team like Utah State. So now that you're back, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. This one feels sweaty, or do you feel confident that SoCal is going to be able to cover this?
What am I looking at? 28.5. We have potential here for a letdown game, which is something we don't normally talk about this early in the season. Usually that's something later on down the road when you have like a big game 2 weeks out, right? And you have a letdown before they're going into that big game or directly after a big game, right? So I think this kind of meets the criteria of a letdown game because they just had that emotional week 1 win at a neutral site game against a ranked opponent in LSU, an SEC opponent. And we know how the rest of the country views SEC programs as like a big time. It's probably a sweat them out game. You know
who's next on their schedule too, right?
I didn't look that far forward.
Michigan, they got a bye week on Michigan.
Oh, okay, so it could be like a look ahead game. This is gonna be a sweat. I have to imagine it's gonna be a sweat. If what you said is true about Miller Moss and he actually is limited within this offense, I didn't necessarily think that. I think he's gonna be fine. But if what you said is correct and he does turn out to be like fairly limited, then yeah, this is probably a sweated out bet. They're gonna win by 29. That's a lot of points.
Yeah, 4 touchdowns plus, right? The hook. That can be a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna bring the slate back up, and we got a few minutes here. Good question. We did talk a little bit about Syracuse just a moment ago. I'll circle back on it. I think it's the schedule, man. I think it really is. That's the big thing. I don't think that Syracuse is one of the 12 best teams in the country. I don't think they're one of the 12 most talented teams in the country. But I think because of the way the ranking system works and the way the ACC is slotted, the way it is, I see a situation where like Miami might be the team that they're going to have to find a way to beat in order to win the ACC or get into the playoff. They're probably going to have to find a way to beat Miami once. Because if you're getting into the playoff and you've got Miami on your regular season schedule, you're probably going to face them in the ACC championship game based on what we saw from week 0 and week 1 out of the ACC. Two of the teams that were expected to compete at the top of Miami are basically out of it at this point. Clemson has a chance to rebound. Florida State does not, right? A 2-loss Florida State losing to Georgia Tech and Boston College, unless they win all the rest of their games by like 50, is probably not getting into the playoff. So you're looking at Miami, who's probably the class of the ACC. The realistic possibility is that if Syracuse plays Miami, I believe, in the last game of the season or the next to last game of the season, based on their schedule, you could face them, and then again in 3 weeks, you'd be facing them in the ACC championship game if you're going to compete in the ACC. I look at the rest of their schedule. Vatek didn't look good this past weekend. Pitt's not what Pitt used to be. They do have Boston College on their schedule. That's a rivalry game for 1, and 2, Boston College looked better this weekend than I expected them to look. Billy O's got them boys playing. Castellanos looks like the real deal. The way he can run the ball and make plays, and he made some throws on the run that are really going to challenge a defense. If they can remain consistent, they're going to be tough. But I just look at Syracuse and I say, I don't think that Syracuse is one of the best 12 best teams in the country, but the schedule lines up that if they can just find a way to beat Miami in one of those games that I would anticipate they have to face them, they can get into the playoff. And who knows at that point, right? I know we've already talked about kind of football, the talent disparity will squash a lot of that Cinderella story. But who knows, right? But if you just get in the playoff, that's a big win for a program like Syracuse.
Yeah, Syracuse best case scenario, they play Miami at home the last game of the season.
That was the other factor too. I didn't bring that. You're absolutely right. Playing them at home is a difference.
Yeah, so Syracuse, one of the few teams in the country that plays in a dome, so it's going to be a unique atmosphere. If Syracuse is really, really good all year long, and I'm going to say kind of overachieves a little bit, but you mentioned the schedule, right?
Overachieve for sure.
Yeah, like if they can clear North Carolina State, who they get at on the road, and then they have to play Boston College on the road as well. But like, let's say they get through those games, they're probably going to be undefeated going into that Miami game. That's going to be a charged up atmosphere. Miami's going to have to come in and play in the dome. They're going to not turn the or they're going to crank the heaters up and it's going to be hot, or they're going to turn them off and it's going to be cold. I don't know what they're going to do because it's going to be November 30th, right? But they're going to try to rattle Miami somehow. Yeah. And so like you have to imagine even if they lose that game, they're probably playing in the ACC title game after that, depending on what like Clemson or Georgia Tech. I don't if they lose that game, they're probably going to need some help to get to the title game. But if they win that game, they will likely be playing in that title game, probably against Miami again. And if there's a way, I think ideally you lose that game against Miami and then you beat them in the title game to win the conference, because it's tough to beat a team twice in a year. We all know this, but there certainly is a path forward because of what you said in the schedule. And maybe Kyle McCord is that guy that got recruited to Ohio State and proves it this year. Like, who knows? Yeah. I will make a note, though, since we're talking winning the ACC, I gave out Miami to win the ACC at plus 380, and I have a ticket for that. If you were to try to bet them this week, it is plus 165.
Yeah.
So
you lost a lot of juice if you didn't listen to Bentley last week.
Yeah. More people should listen to me, Gary. I've been saying that for years.
Yep, for sure. But yeah, I do think like from the perspective of that they could threaten for a playoff spot, the schedule lines up. Now, they go and lay an egg against Georgia Tech this weekend, then we're back to the same old Cuse. They're a mediocre football program, yada, yada. One thing I did love from this weekend is that the receivers and the tight end that I made a lot of plays with in college football, the video game, made a lot of plays this weekend. If you don't know the name yet, if you missed the episode that I highlighted him, know the name Oronde Gadsden Jr., whose father played in the NFL, had a good career, not great, good, was a big-bodied wide receiver. Oronde Gadsden Jr. is a big-bodied, super athletic tight end, and fuck is he hard to cover. He had like 106 yards this weekend on, I think, 7 catches, and he scored a touchdown. Zeed Haynes, transfer from Georgia, fucking absolute burner. If McCord can get any chemistry with him, Zeed had, I think, 4 catches for like 65 yards this weekend. They've got some options in terms of playmakers in that offense. They just got to be able to put it all together. And as you said, if Kyle McCord can be the guy that was recruited to Florida State, big time high school recruit, then you got something brewing there in Syracuse, I think, potentially.
Yeah. I agree. They could be a lot of fun. I know we're running up on our time limit here. I have 2 games I want to highlight here that are not in our top 25.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right, we're going to go off the board just a tiny
off
bit.
The board.
You mentioned college football 25. I'm sure that most people are familiar with it by now. If you are not familiar with the Texas State quarterback, McLeod, you talked about your transfer from Georgia being a burner. This quarterback is an absolute burner. Yeah. Texas State is hosting UTSA this weekend. It's a 1-point line, so it's basically a pick-em. This game should be electric. Should be a lot of offense.
Oh, yeah.
UTSA, it's a 1-point line, but the matchup predictor on ESPN gives them a 72% chance to win. It's a little like you're getting minus money on both sides of the money line. I don't really understand how the matchup predictor gives a 72% chance to win, like, to the road team when it's a pick-em. That doesn't really make sense to me. But that game should be a lot of fun if you're into, kind of high-scoring, lower no disrespect to them, but lower tier programs, right?
Sure.
In-state rivals, that's always a good time.
Texas State, the powerhouse on college football.
Yes, them. Yes. So speaking of powerhouses, there's a game this weekend between 2 former powerhouse programs. And had we had more time on this episode, I would have loved to get your thoughts on the Dylan Raiola experience.
Oh, yeah.
But we will certainly talk about them next week. I am certain of it.
Absolutely.
Because Colorado is going to Lincoln. Shedeur Sanders against Dylan Raiola. This is a 7.5-point line in favor of Nebraska. You're laying minus 270 on the money line. If you're into that, over-unders is 58.5. I would lay the 7.5 with Nebraska. Nebraska is a team whose defense has improved from last year, which was already pretty good. Matt Rule typically wins a lot of games in his second year at a program, and they brought in Dylan Raiola, who could next year be a Heisman candidate. Like, I'm not going to call him a Heisman candidate this year, but, like, he looked the part in week 1. He threw the ball down the field with accuracy and timing and velocity. Like, he looked incredible in week 1. Granted, not like the toughest opponent in who did they play? UTEP, excuse me. But I'll pose a question to you. What just thoughts on the game? Where are you going with this one?
Yeah, look, I've been clear about how much fun I think Coach Prime is, but I'm also realistic about the fact that they still don't have an offensive line. Despite bringing in a couple of transfers and a 5-star offensive tackle, I think they need time to grow. And it's unfortunately for Shedeur, it's not going to be this season probably. They're just not ready in terms of winning in the trenches the way you have to in this level of football. They were going to out-athlete everybody at Jackson State, but here it's been a struggle. And Nebraska, you mentioned it. Matt Rule wins a lot of games in his second year in a program. Matt Rule brought in a lot of talent to Nebraska. Matt Rule brought in maybe the best quarterback in the nation in 2025 to Nebraska. We'll see how Arch Manning does at Texas as well. And I know there's a few other names out there. But Dylan Raiola, I agree with you 100%. Looked the part. He's big. He's strong. It looks like he's got a really accurate arm as well, which was a big thing for him in high school. They talked a lot about his accuracy coming out of high school and why he was so highly recruited, highly touted, and why it was such a big coup for Nebraska to get him. So I'm with you. I don't know that Nebraska is going to make that run this year, but I do think during Dylan Raiola's time and Matt Rule's time at Nebraska, we're going to see Lincoln rocking in some big-time bowl games, probably in a playoff at some point during this tenure for Rule. and Raiola. I just think that they've got it going the right direction. And I believe in Matt Rule. I wanted him when he was leaving college. I wanted him for Washington to bring him in as head coach. I think he got a bad deal there in Carolina. I think he could have been successful in the NFL had he been somewhere else. But he's a program builder, man. He's won fucking everywhere he goes, turns programs. I mean, he turned Baylor around. Like, after the whole fucking scandal and all the bad pub and the fucking sanctions from the NCAA and all that, he turned that program
They
around.
did bad things. There were bad. It wasn't just bad pub. Bad things happened.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Baylor.
I wasn't trying to talk that out here. Bad stuff down there.
Yes.
It was terrible. Art Briles should be fucking forever ashamed of what he allowed to go on there. The Baylor fucking administration, all of it. It was terrible, and everything was exposed. And Matt Rule went there and rebuilt that really quickly. They were pretty successful under Matt Rule. I think he's going to do the same thing in Nebraska. I wonder if he's going to stick around, though, because Matt Rule's a guy that, like, builds it and leaves, builds it and leaves, builds it and leaves. We'll see. Nebraska is a place where you can become that, like, legendary guy. They've been dying for the next guy. They thought it was going to be Scott Frost. It wasn't, but they've been dying for it. So maybe Matt Rule becomes that guy in Lincoln.
Well, if he decides that in a few years he wants to leave, I imagine there's going to be a head coaching vacancy somewhere in Columbia, South Carolina, as much as it hurts my heart. But we could use a program builder. That being said, I do have to shed a little bit of light because it is in my tagline. The number 1 rated pass rusher from this weekend was a true freshman 5-star from the state of Virginia. Whatever, dude. Casual, not a big deal. Named Dylan Stewart, who plays for the South Carolina Gamecocks. Like, it's just the number 1 rated pass rusher on the weekend. It's fine. True freshman. It's fine. That's all. I just wanted to highlight that just a little bit, just so the people know.
You got your new Jadeveon Clowney.
He might be better.
Yeah. Hopefully he's got a better motor.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
For sure. All right. Well, as we said at the top of the show, we do have a draft here in about 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Bentley, appreciate you taking the time to chat some ball with me. Next week we will have a more full slate. We will have we'll run the entire gamut the way we usually do. But for Bentley, for everybody at Backyard Sports, this has been another episode of Tailgate Trash Talk, brought to you by Backyard Sports. We are out.